Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth, invited guests, city staff, and all in attendance. Also, I want to acknowledge my colleagues on city council, Mr. Carter, our city manager. Sitting in for our city attorney is Mr. Challenger, and also our city clerk, Ms. Deborah White. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. And with that, we will open up the public work session. Mr. Carter, sir, you have the floor. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam Clerk. To my colleagues, if you would please note your attendance electronically.
6 members of the City Council are present.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, my colleagues, and the rest of the City Council. Thank you for being here this evening. To honored guests who are in the audience. We have a couple of presentations for you this evening. The first one is going to be by our City Assessor, Mr. Steve Edwards. He's going to bring his reassessment report, followed by the Communities and Schools of Hampton Roads. We'll introduce them after Mr. Edwards finishes his presentation. Mr. Edwards?
Good evening, Mayor Glover, Vice Mayor Moody, members of council, my fellow appointees, and the millions of assessment fans watching online.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you for having me to discuss the methods, analysis, and conclusions in the annual real estate reassessment for the fiscal year 25-26. In the next few slides, I will discuss the authority and responsibilities of the assessor, our mission, and day-to-day functions of staff. And I will brief you on market conditions for the 2024 calendar year and present the proposed assessments and talk briefly about the next steps in the process. First off, the authorities and responsibilities are given to me pursuant to Title 58.1 of the Code of Virginia. It is the duty of the appointed city assessor to list and maintain records on all real property, which is real estate, within the city of Portsmouth and to ensure that assessments are conducted in a fair, equitable manner upon all city property owners. State code requires assessments to be uniform among classes of property within geographical boundaries. State code also requires assessors to strive for 100% of fair market value. What is fair market value? The recognized definition of fair market value in Virginia arose from a 1958 Supreme Court case entitled Tuckahoe Women's Club versus the City of Richmond. The definition states that fair market value is the price a property will bring when it is offered for sale by one who desires but is not obligated to sell, and bought by one who is under no necessity of having it. The mission of the assessor's office, and some of these are kind of redundant because you see them every year. The mission of the Office of the City Assessor is to appraise all real property throughout the city in a fair and equitable manner as mandated by the Code of the State of Virginia, the Code of the City of Portsmouth, in accordance with the professional guidelines set forth by the International Association of Assessing Officers. This mission will be carried out in a courteous, efficient, and professional manner by well-trained staff dedicated to the service of citizens of Portsmouth. The day-to-day functions of the office, and this is not an all-inclusive list, but it's just some highlights. We provide assistance to the public, customer service, inspect and collect data on all new construction, review and update records on existing properties, process and validate property transfers, perform statistical analysis, process parcel combinations and subdivisions, analyze and process changes in data documentation resulting from changes in assessment valuation. We also process real estate programs and effects of real estate as, process real estate programs and effects on real estate as an application or oversight function of the assessment process and any outcome changes in valuation. And we also work interactively with all other offices and departments within the city. Now, the next slide is one of my favorites because this is what everybody thinks we do. We actually had a dartboard in my old office I worked in as a joke. And what we really do is, and the scope of what we do in mass appraisal is different than what a single-family appraiser would do. The single-family or the commercial appraiser focuses on one specific property. Mass appraisal focuses on a universe of properties. The single-family or commercial appraiser make property-specific adjustments. Mass appraisal relies on statistical analysis of an entire assessment neighborhood utilizing models for overall valuation. Single-family and commercial appraisal is regulated by uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, where we're guided by the state tax code along with the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. Single-family and commercial appraisers review sales and income specific to the property that they're doing. Mass appraisal sale data is regulated by state tax code. Sales are vetted, and there are 20 reasons why the sales are not valid and only one why it is. And that's if we can't find one of those 20 reasons to throw it out. Now we're going to move on to some of the metrics that we came across for the calendar year 2024, which is the year of data we used for assessments. The overall annual interest rate for 2024 was 6.72, and it started edging up towards the end of the year. Beginning of 2025, it was slightly over 7. I checked this morning, and it was 6.95. Another metric that we use is days on market, and as you can see, it's been pretty much a steady decline to below a month for the last several years. Right now, we're sitting at 20 days, which is indicative of a seller's market with low inventory and typically is indicative of price appreciation. This slide here just shows that all the cities around us had similar low days on market, and all slightly went up, but not a lot. This is the number of transfers in our office. Were slightly up from last year. Last year we processed 3,653 transfers. This year we had 3,718, and a transfer is anything from a sale to a will to a deed of gift or anything that changes in the real estate. And what makes this number impressive is the lack of foreclosures that were included in that, which we'll talk about in a little while. This is just another slide comparing us with the other cities, and the transfers all tend to have been going up, but some of these were the other cities I got out of rain, so it might not be an all-inclusive count like ours is, because ours was taken from our actual office records. And the foreclosures, as you can see, have dropped to one of the lowest we've had in a long time. They've been basically trending down for quite a while, and then except for 2020, which is there was a moratorium, I'm sure most of you remember, on foreclosure, so there weren't any, which would have resulted in the uptick we had in 2022 and 2023 when they were allowed to start processing foreclosures again. But the 28 we had this year is just really indicative of a strong seller's market, that people weren't going into foreclosure. They were allowed to, or getting rid of the properties before they lost them. The median sales price has been ticking up since 2013, and based off of the current sales we have, the median sales price for a property in Portsmouth right now is $274,950. And since 2013, that is a 120% uptick in the median house price. And we can see we were up from $265,000 last year. We're up 3.8% overall on our median house price, kind of in line with the other cities that have similar older housing stock like we do, such as like Hampton, Newport News, Norfolk. We're still lagging behind, but not as big a gap as there used to be. And I just wanted to bring the last 3 years' worth of land books in to kind of show that the total assessed value has been trending up. We were at 9.9 billion in fiscal year 23, 10.5 billion last year, and we're proposing right now almost 10.9 billion. And the one metric I really wanted to take out of this was that residential accounts for 93.1% of the overall properties in the city, whereas commercial is 6.9, but residential only accounts for 72% of the overall value, where commercial accounts for 28% of the overall value. And I have been asked in the past about commercial carrying the load, and I would say that that metric shows that commercial is, given the small number of commercial and the amount of the book it's covering, they are sharing their load. And then this is just a pie chart to show the residential property types that we have in the city. And overall, the biggest property type we have is single-family dwellings, along with duplexes, condos, townhouses, and triplexes. All have a little sliver, but nothing like single-family. And along with those, we also have, that accounts for 31,355 residential units. We also have 11,040 apartment units in various multifamily buildings throughout the city, with more coming. And I just did, this one is just to show that just what we have in age range and how many properties are still standing from those particular ranges. And one thing I think worthy of note is over 75% of the properties in this city were built prior to 1980. The next few slides show the impact of the reassessment on the individual neighborhoods. These numbers show percentage change of the total value of a particular neighborhood. These changes are solely based on market conditions within the neighborhood. As we scroll through these slides, you will see some double-digit increases, one as high as 17%. As we discussed earlier, we strive for ratios of 100%, and those neighborhoods that increased had ratios that were below 100, and some were well below that threshold. For example, the neighborhood with the 17% increase had a ratio slightly below 80 based on the 2024 sales. After the reval adjustments, the ratio came in slightly over 97%. You also have the commercial districts, which are shown here, but we'll get more into the commercial. We'll break it down by property class, which is a little more of the way commercial was really done. But these are all median values. We use median because it kind of gives you the center point, the extremes don't affect the number as much. And then this pie chart here just gives you a breakdown of the ranges of properties in the city and the percentage of overall changes within each range. For example, 25% of the total residential changes occurred in the property value range of $200,000 to $249,900, which is probably a good starter range for a lot of people seeking a house. And overall, this just shows the dispersion of the actual increases and or decreases. We had 85 total properties that decreased, and a lot of times the decreases are due to demolitions, fires, just minor things. Maybe we did an audit on the property and found that the detached garage was no longer there, so that resulted in a slight decrease in the property. We had 2,615 properties that reflect no change was needed based on their ratios being at or near 100%. And one example of that would have been Admiral's Landing, which was right at 100, I think 100.1%. And we had 21,975 properties that had an increase of up to 3%. 37,017 properties reflected an increase of 3.1 to 5%. 2,500 149 properties reflect an increase of 5.1 to 10%. 1,127 properties reflect an increase of 10.1 to 15%, and 250 properties reflected an increase of over 15%. These next few slides here reflect the commercial property classes, and they just reflect the median value range of what happened within there. And like I said, the median does not show the extremes because some of these had some rather steep increases. As we scroll through these slides, you will see some double-digit increases, one triple-digit increase of 102%. And this is a property that had a long-term lease, which we were able to obtain this year through the I&E process, which resulted in a very substantial increase because we had no idea of what that lease was like. And then this is just a breakdown of 50% of the commercial properties fall under general commercial. General commercial would be a gas station, a fast food restaurant, this building, office buildings, medical office buildings, things like that. 22% fall under industrial, which are more of your warehouse type properties and your shops and all that. And then 28% fall under multifamily, which is the apartments. And then this shows the breakdown between last year and this year of what happened in each category. General commercial increased from 1.4 to 1.5 billion. Industrial increased from 647 million to 677 million. And multifamily increased from 809 million to 833 million. And I have those breakdowns in percentages, which ended up being general commercial was a 4.89% overall, multifamily a 2.96%, and industrial a 4.7% increase from last year. And another pie chart like was earlier that shows you just where a lot of these changes took place, and 43%, for example, were under 200,000, and the 200,000 is what it really shows us is we have a lot of small mom and pop commercial that's out there, along with a lot of older commercial properties that are ready for renovation that need to be, and a lot of those were bought and some of them are in our renovation program now, our rehab program, I'm sorry. And then as we get into the commercial breakdown, we had 52 properties that decreased in value. A significant portion of these were land equalization for the industrial land. 612 properties reflect no change. 1,491 properties changed up to 10%. 122 properties changed between 10 and 15, and 105 properties had a greater change than 15%. Now we get into the actual numbers. We have 32,559 residential properties in 192 neighborhoods, and 2,403 commercial properties in 7 commercial districts. 0.26% of the residential properties decreased in value, 91.65% of the residential properties increased in value, and 8% of the residential properties had no change. Overall, the median increase in residential values was 3.3%, and the median increase in commercial property was 4.31. And the overall land book last year was 10.5 billion. This year we're looking at almost 10.9 billion, which overall gives us 3.6% or $378.6 million increase. And this is additional information that we also get. The State Corporation Commission and the Department of Taxation value certain properties within the city. We don't do them, they do. The SEC values properties that are more along the public good, like telecommunications, energy and gas type properties. And they do those. They assess them. They send us the assessments. We put everything in the system, and they get done at the full tax rate that we have, and it resulted, and they usually come in around October. We this past year, that resulted in an additional $125,696,000 in assessed value. And the Department of Taxation does rolling stock railroad, which had an additional value of $21,519,877. And those are, like I said, they come in around October. They start bugging us for information probably around August, and they get us everything back around October. And then we have the three major tax abatement programs in the city. The DAB program is administered by the Commissioner of Revenue and changes throughout the year. For example, just last week, we received a notice containing 14 new participants in the program and 4 that were coming out. The DAV numbers represent a snapshot as of February 21st, 2025. So you can see that we have, I think last year we had slightly over 800 participants. Now we have 1,065 at $319 million that's of assessed value, which is 2.9% of the proposed land book. The senior tax relief and senior tax freeze generally don't fluctuate as much throughout the year. And we'll see an example of that on the next slide. The first thing is the tax relief. We can see it's slightly increased from 23 to 24. 23 is the blue, 24 is the orange. Same thing with tax freeze, just a slight increase. But the disabled veteran had a rather large increase last year when I reported. The numbers were as of February 15th last year. So from February 15th last year to February 21st this year, it went from 251 million to 319 million. And we have some additional land that's also not, or properties that are non-taxable. They're owned by local governments, us, Norfolk, Suffolk, et cetera. The regional, the state, the U.S. government. Then there's church properties, hospital properties, charitable properties, and then educational. And then the pie charts kind of show that the assessed values of those properties, if you combine both land books, the non-taxable and the taxable land book, that 65% of the overall value in the city is taxable and 35% is non-taxable. But if you go strictly just on land area, 43% of the overall land area within the city of Portsmouth is non-taxable, where 57% holds properties that are taxable. So that encompasses quite a wide range of our actual land. And the next steps we're looking at are notices, we're planning to mail them out on or around March 7th. The informal hearings will be from March 17th through March 31st during set hours in the office. We'll have set hours that appraisers will be there to answer phone calls and walk-ins. The Board of Equalization applications will be accepted through April 25th. During this time, the staff will continue to process new construction, alterations, and sales study audits for the fourth quarter. The land book will be produced after fourth quarter audits, land permits, and everything else, and it will go into effect for July 1st, 2025. And we do have some exciting things coming in Portsmouth here. The Economic Development and the Portsmouth Port and Industrial Commission has been busy at work getting us some extra properties to look at. And we've got the Cube Smart Self-Storage of Portsmouth at 1415 Effingham, which should be done very soon, according to my commercial appraisers. The Port Apartments, which is the old Kroger site, is going to add an additional 232 apartments. The Grove Church Ripley Heat Bowl development on West Norfolk Road is proposing 208 additional apartments and 74 single-family building lots. We have the Baines Point, that's going to give us 50 affordable housing units. We have 2 transload facilities coming on the railway properties, one on Virginia Avenue and one on Harbor Avenue. We have a 47 townhouse project coming in the Innovation District called King's Landing. And then we've had a newly renovated building at 545 High Street that was an old office building that's been converted into 44 apartment units and first floor retail. And it was several $1 million renovation. And the same gentleman who did that is actually just purchased 309 High Street and is currently undergoing a multi-million-dollar remodel, converting a commercial space into an existing storefront and an additional 11 apartment units. And I'm ready, I'll take any questions you have, but one thing, just as I stated last year, if you start getting a bunch of phone calls, please send them to us, as we're equipped to handle them. We have all the information to pass out and disseminate to everyone regarding their neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Edwards, for the brief. A couple of questions and then an ask. So on page 39, the non-taxable property,
Yes.
the state bar chart there is 176 million. Is that the value of the Port of Virginia?
No.
Where's the Port of Virginia?
We actually tax that based on the court case that was won in 2020. They actually are valued under taxable.
Okay. All right. And the regional government bar that's on there, what gets
I think-
tallied up in that?
I believe that's like City of Norfolk, City of Chesapeake, anything that runs through the city that other
Okay.
cities own.
All right. So wasn't all that long ago that we had a great big pile of commercial backlog. How are we doing at working through the
We've
commercial
been
backlog?
through, what we found was a lot of those permits had been worked. They just were put back in the pile for some reason. Can't explain why, but we've went through them, but he's still working. Last year, I had him actually go out and start just taking property classes and just print all the cards, going by, looking at one by one, taking pictures, taking notes, updating all our records, so we can get everything back to where it should be. So he's done, I'd say we've probably covered maybe 10% so far. So, well, probably more than that, but say probably knocked out good 300, 400, 500 of them in the course of 6 months when he had some spare time to run out in between everything else. So that's the goal, is to put our eyeballs on every commercial property in the city and make sure all our records are correct, to make sure there were no permits that were missed during that time frame when that huge pile was there. But he's been through that pile as best we had it.
So do we have either a commercial or residential backlog right now?
Nothing outside of the norm that we would normally carry. Things that are, I mean, it's not like it was where there was 5, 6-year-old permits. Now it's just the normal, probably anything in the last year, year and a half that's not completed yet. I think his biggest thing right now is probably the self-storage place. I think that's probably his biggest amount of permits he has.
Okay. And then my ask, so I think it was 2 years ago when Ms. Culpepper was our interim assessor, when she delivered this brief, as I recall, she gave us kind of a single-family house comparison, the value of a typical house in Portsmouth compared to that same house in Chesapeake and Norfolk and Virginia Beach and Suffolk. The point being, we wanted to do the math problem to take the value of a typical house times our tax rate to figure out where are we really at in property tax in that math problem. And as I recall, the math problem a couple of years ago showed that even though we had a higher tax rate, because our home values for the same home were so much lower than, say, the same house in Virginia Beach, the amount of property tax that our folks were paying on that typical house was less than their counterpart in Virginia Beach for exactly the same house.
Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and I used my house, for example. I showed them what my house would be in Chesapeake, right down the road from where I live. And mine here is 470,000, I think. There it's 700, slightly over 700. So
Yeah, so my ask is, could you do the same thing, maybe go back to the brief that Ms. Culpepper did, pick that kind of
Yeah.
2,200 square foot typical 1970s construction, because it looks like that's kind of where our highest, number of single-family homes was constructed, and pick a typical house and provide that home value to comparison to us across the Hampton Roads communities, please.
Yeah, not a problem.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the briefing, by the way. Lot of information. Let's go to page 22, where you have the different breakdown on,
Oops.
I guess, residential property, but that's really not where I wanted to go. Hold on. Want to go to the commercial listing that you have. I just had it here a minute ago.
27?
Yeah, 27. Thank you. What category is the, okay. What category is the casino listed under?
It would be under unclassified, because our system doesn't have a code for casinos.
So it's unclassified?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And my colleague asked about the backlog of commercial. How many commercial assessors do we have now?
We have Mr. Hines, and
Appraisers have
we've brought Miss Grassley, who was doing a little residential and commercial. We've kind of moved her over full-time to commercial, so now we're up to 2.
We have 2. So what percentage of all the commercial properties do you believe has been assessed in the past year?
Well, we've done them all, but we've only seen, like, physically been out and looked at probably, let's say, if you take 400, probably about 30% maybe.
So it's 70% of our commercial properties that haven't been visited, and
I don't know what they were before I was here, but in the 2.5 years I've been here, that's the, I don't know what the time frame they were looked at prior to that, but since I've been here, the 2.5 years, that's where we're at right now. Well, I mean, if you throw the apartments in, because I looked at a lot of the apartments my first year here when I was deputy, and there's about, so that would take us probably closer to 40%.
so I would think that commercial properties, like residential properties, things happen to the building, additions, remodeling. So we're probably missing the boat on some of that.
Yeah, we found, when he went out, I know he looked at like convenience stores, just regular, anything classified as a store, any kind of store type. And I think he found a lot that were really just run down, and probably some of them were closed, some of them were renovated. So we were able to capture a lot of that. So we still have some footwork to do, but we're chugging along and getting there.
Do you have enough tools to be able to close that gap where we visit more than?
We proposed for an additional commercial appraiser in our budget this year, and the city manager granted it. So once July gets here, we'll be put out for another, and we're going to try to get another experienced commercial appraiser, which should help close that gap pretty good, because then they'll roughly have about 800 properties to 1,000 each, which is what the standard is for commercial property. And then they should be able to really dig into the weeds on a lot of the properties. It's a lot easier when you're not looking at, with the tax exempt when you're over 3,000 properties. So it's kind of hard when you're looking at everything by yourself. Now that he's got 2, there's a little bit more dispersion between the 2 of them, but it's still a lot to do for 2 people.
Yeah. How often are you able to get out in the field?
I'm hoping to get out a lot more than I have been. I haven't been out in probably 2 2 months now, just getting the bureaucratic side of everything done.
Thanks.
Councilman Dotson, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Nice report. A couple weeks ago, we were discussing the database that you have. I've got a number of questions, but the first question is, how's that progressing? And could you enlighten the rest of the council as to what we're talking about?
Where the project you're talking about is the vision project. It's been dragging on for a couple days now. We're still working with our, and I can't say this word to save my life, implementation team. I cannot say that fast. We're still working with them on weekly meetings. We're still working through the programmatic mishaps that happen in most new software. Some people call them bugs. We're slowly getting rid of all of those, and we're working with a gentleman who was part of the project in the beginning, and he was brought back in to get the residential models and tables up to today's standards.
All right, so basically what we're talking about is a database that helps compare for values of different properties, and you expect to have that database finished by, and relationships in the systems finished by?
That one, hopes and dreams.
Right, that's what I'm asking. A target, what's your target?
The target would be, I'd love July 1st.
Oh, good, good. Thank you. Next question is, one of the things I'm interested in going into the budget hearings about is the health of our city. And when I look at a lot of the data you have here, I don't have a comparison as to what a healthy city looks like, and I'm not sure how to construct that. I would love to have a talk with you about how we say what is a good distribution between commercial and residential in a healthy city.
We're right in line.
When I look at the numbers in here, I think that we are not a healthy city.
Because I've looked, like, if you look, I know I looked at Virginia Beach, I think they're 8% commercial and the 92% residential.
And we are
We're 93 and 7.
and 3 and 7. But I also look at the property values. One of the things that you've put in here about the residential values, over $500,000 houses, we have less than 1%, while the national average is over 17% in that value. To me, that one number sort of tells us that, wait a minute, our property values are not going to provide us the revenue. A lot of people want a lot of social programs in our city. In order to support those, we need tax dollars. And without having some more of these higher end value and more commercial properties, I see a problem with us supporting those social programs that have traditionally been supported in the city. To do that, I'd love to see some comparisons as to how we might tackle that, where these deficiencies might be, that we could make that up, and in my opinion, become a more healthy city as far as the tax base goes. If there's some way to do that, I don't want to ask you the question now because I don't want to take up the time, but if there's some way to do that, I would love to hear from you to say, what are some comparisons that we could see at the retreat that would help us to understand the health of our city?
Okay.
Thank
and it
you,
goes
sir.
across a couple of pages in here, and I don't want to belabor it here with the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Thomas, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. My first question, it's really, I heard you say that, your office does a lot of statistical analysis. That's a hard word to say, like
Yes.
implementation. But in that statistical analysis, what are you looking at in this data, kind of future growth or trends as well, so that we can kind of, I guess what our outlook is going to be, especially when we talk about what's going on with federal jobs, and we know we are heavily impacted here locally. I know you had the foreclosure trend, gave us the mortgage interest rate trend, the days on market trend, but what other trends in your analysis are you looking at that we can help prepare us for future years?
Well, the one thing with assessments, unfortunately, we're reactive, not proactive, because we use prior years, like now we're using all of calendar year 2024 to predict what's going to happen in 2025. So we're always behind the curve. That's why it's generally always changing. And you get the commercial, when you're doing income and expense stuff, you're using actually 2023 data because 2024 is not even available when we start doing our work. So we're always in a reactive, not proactive.
We don't have a predictive
So, yeah, we
modeling.
don't have
Okay.
a predictive model at all.
Okay, and then, thank you for that. That might be something, I don't know if is that something available? I'm not that familiar with what you have tools available in the
No,
marketplace.
I would think
but
that would be more along the lines of an economist.
Economic development, okay, thank you. Then next question, oh, wait. Okay, I heard you say, when Councilman Hugo asked, I think, or Vice Mayor Moody, one of them asked about the number of assessors in your office and just kind of keeping up with that backlog and so forth. And so something I was interested as well, are you all looking at like any AI-driven features that has like extraction and change detection imagery to look at that so that we can maybe, maximize the number of assessors we have, but still stay on top of our assessments and looking at changes overall from an aerial view with that?
That is kind of a newer trend. They've had it in the past, but it never really worked, the change detector. I worked in a different city, and we spent the money for it, and we ended up basically losing money because it just
doesn't
didn't
work.
work. I mean, the
Okay.
technology wasn't there yet. So, I mean, the technology is getting there, but as with everything else, it's extremely expensive.
Yes.
And I think boots on the ground is probably cheaper than the cost of some of that software.
Maybe so. Hopefully, just with it becoming
I mean,
more
it helps you have a good idea of where you need to be.
right.
So you're not
right,
wasting time going to places that you don't need to be, but
Right.
it's just, becomes a cost benefit analysis at the end of the day. Is the cost
Is it worth
worth?
it? Right. Okay. I was just thinking when I heard about kind of where you were going with your staff and just thinking out the box of where we could
I
how we
mean,
could help that.
It's a lot safer.
And then I think, let's see, Councilman Hugo asked my question about the port. Page 18, let's see. Oh, yes, on page 18, you had a pie chart, I think. Oh, yeah, so I heard you say the number of, when you talked about the dispersion by housing type, the number of apartments, but it's not, that's not included in this
It's not
pie
included in that
chart.
pie
Okay.
chart because this is for residential and they fall under commercial. I just put them there to
Okay.
reference to how many housing units we actually have available in the city.
I got you. So it's on, wait, you don't have a pie chart for that one?
No,
Okay. All right, thank you.
Did get that for you?
Thank you.
Are there any other questions by my colleagues? Thank you. Couple of things I need you to help me understand, help us understand. On page 17, when you talk about market data and total assessed value. Is total assessed value a good thing? Is the number going up a good thing, or is that not a good thing?
Depends on where you're sitting. For us, yes. For somebody receiving the bill, not so much. But yeah, you want it to go up. It's the biggest investment you're going to make, so you want to see it go up, and it's going up. It's trending the correct way.
And,
That's right.
and in addition to that, buying a home in the city of Portsmouth, I've done some asking and listening. Buying a home in Portsmouth relative to some of our other localities is still a really good value, would you say?
Yes. Like I said, I looked at I live probably a quarter mile from the Chesapeake line, and literally a mile and a half from me is a subdivision in Chesapeake that my house would be $300,000 more.
Correct. And in addition to that, the other thing that I think is important, what percentage of homeowners do we have in the city of Portsmouth? Do you know?
I do not.
I think it's somewhere around about 56 or in the 50s, the
Yeah, 'cause
percentage.
not all of
homeowners in
them
our city.
change. Some of them you can tell relatively easy because their mailing address is different than the property address, but not everyone changes that.
Right.
So it's hard to really gauge that through the records we have.
Very good. And another question, as a part of that percentage of homeowners, what percent, and maybe you may not know this, but you may know it, and you can get back to me if you don't, what percentage of those property owners, what percentage of tax revenue to the city comes from those property owners? Is it 50%? Is it 60% of the revenue that we bring in from property taxes?
For just, for just real estate taxes
Right,
overall?
real estate taxes.
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
I don't
Get
know
back,
off the top
get
of my
back
head.
to us on that. I think that's
I
an
want to say,
important
I want to say it's
component.
like 64%, but I could be totally off base with that.
Okay. Councilman Thomas, ma'am, you have the floor. Councilwoman, I'm sorry. Thomas.
Thank you, no problem, thank you, Mayor. One more question, just kind of off of that, I forgot to ask you this. What really drives the price per square foot, like just for knowledge base? What,
Appraisers do not use price per square foot. That's
Okay.
something realtors use.
okay,
It's misleading because price per square foot includes everything on the property. This property may just be a house. This one's a house with a garage and a pool. Well, if you go by price per square foot and you use this price per square foot to appraise this house, you're gonna overdo this house because this guy had a pool and a garage, this guy didn't have, but his $190 a square foot versus what should be $130 a square foot is gonna affect that. So you actually look at the house, look at the sales and determine by price range what the house should be, and then also add the amenities back in for the garages, pools, patios, decks, porches, things like that.
okay. I was just wondering because, bought a home in Portsmouth, bought a home in Alexandria before. And to Councilman Hugel's question earlier about comparing two similar homes, one in Portsmouth, one in Chesapeake, I was just trying to figure out what are the main drivers. I think I know. What are the main drivers between those differences for something we can take back as a council to address those drivers of the differences between two similar houses, one in Chesapeake, one in Portsmouth?
In a theoretical world, this house and this house are identical. One's Chesapeake, one's Portsmouth. They're both built by the same builder. The cost is the same. The difference would be the land value, because the land's more expensive in Chesapeake than it is in Portsmouth.
And why is that? What are some of the key drivers of the
Yeah,
land
that's
value?
just, some of it's preference, some of it's perception.
That's what
I
I'm
mean,
getting
a lot,
to.
a
I'm
lot
getting
of
to
it,
things that
a
we
lot
can
of it
address
is,
as
a lot of it's
council. Okay.
speculation and perception.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councilman Hugel, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. One follow-up question, Mr. Edwards. So on page 34, you've shown that right now your residential property value projected increase is 3.33%. Can you do some homework and figure out what the similar residential property value increases are in some of the neighboring Hampton Road cities? So we have a comparison. Is everybody going up 3.3%, or is our rate increasing faster or slower than our friends in the area? Thank you.
Vice Mayor Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. One last question. When we're appraising commercial property that produces income like apartments, restaurants, casinos, do we use the income factor?
Yes. When, and this year, and I brought that because I know last year you asked me, and last year we had an abysmal year getting the income back.
Yeah.
This year, I'm guessing we must be getting closer where people are starting to send them in. We got 30, I want to give you the exact number. We received 33.8% back.
This year?
Where last year we were under 10.
What percentage should we receive back?
That's the best I've seen in my 26 years, 27 years.
So out of 100% that were made, we only getting 30-some percent?
Yeah, because most people, we don't get them right away. A lot of them, especially the big commercial, we get them when the tax reps contact us.
So what do we do in that case?
We take what we do get and we generate income models based off of the data that they give us, because that's the market data. So we'll average out the vacancy and collection from, we'll just use apartments because it's the easiest to talk about. We'll go through all their INEs for a Class A apartment. We'll get all the vacancy and collection. We'll figure out what, between them all, what the market should be out of all these INEs, and that's what we put in the model. When we'll have an economic model, which is driven from the actual INEs we received, and we build an economic model based off of what their rents they're getting for a 1, 2, 3 bedroom, their vacancy and collection. We'll go through all their expenses and see what their expense ratio is. We'll generate an operating expense ratio based off of the market data that we get from those INEs, and then we build the model. You get your potential gross income from the market rents it would generate, take the vacancy and collection out, add any other income back in that they have. Some do, some don't. So we'll use those models to see if that particular, like A's generally will have other income because they have other amenities that people are paying for, or maybe a C-grade apartment, which are typically your older apartments. They don't really have a whole lot of amenities. They're just basically somewhere with 4 walls to live.
Well, that's a lot of work. I take it that your data program can do that?
Excel can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yes, in the new stuff, yes. And my understanding is the system we have has that ability, but it's not turned on, I think is what I was told. I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure, because the system we have is rather old.
Well, my point is, if we're only getting 30-some% back on businesses that producing income, I take it we're probably missing the boat on some assessments. Is that accurate?
Through my experience, if you get a good sampling back, you can build a pretty accurate model that generally is hard to beat.
Well, still,
I mean, if we only got one back, yeah, you couldn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, given the amount we got this time, that was a relatively. I mean, as far as that type of thing goes, that's outstanding. I've never seen probably more than 22%.
it'd be good to know what the other localities around here, the percentage they get back, when you get around to it. Just be interested to know. To me, that's extremely low percent coming back.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. If you don't have any other information you need to let us know about.
All right. Oops.
And if you could, at your earliest convenience, follow up on those questions that
Yes.
were asked, and you can provide that in a report back if you would like.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Carter, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next presentation will be from the Communities and Schools of Hampton Roads. Ms. Ann Wilbur, the Development Director, and Dr. Hope Sinclair. Is she with you? Yes. Dr. Hope Sinclair, the Executive Director, will also be a part of this presentation. Ms. Wilbur, thank you for being here this evening. Please provide your presentation.
Mayor Glover, Vice Mayor Moody, council members, and City Manager Carter. My name is Ann Wilbur. I'm the Development Director for Communities and Schools of Hampton Roads. We're a nonprofit organization that is based here in the city of Portsmouth. Our office is in the Town Bank building. I am also a resident of the Glen Sheila neighborhood in Portsmouth, and Dr. Hope Sinclair is a resident of the Hatton Point Churchland area. So we're Portsmouth citizens doing our work in Portsmouth, helping Portsmouth students and some students in other cities across Hampton Roads. Communities and Schools of Hampton Roads is the local affiliate of a national student success and dropout prevention nonprofit. It's called Communities and Schools, and it was founded by a gentleman named Bill Milliken in the 1970s in Harlem. And he came to the conclusion that part of the dropout crisis was that students were not receiving the resources they needed to be able to succeed in school. And his great idea was, instead of going out to all of the homes across the Harlem neighborhood, that you would bring the resources to the students in the schools. Through that, a program was developed called Integrated Student Supports. The primary reason or the primary cause of students not succeeding in school is poverty. Here in the city of Portsmouth, according to GHR Connects, which is the statistical arm of the United Way, 11.62% of Portsmouth families with children live below the poverty level. According to our own Portsmouth poverty study, 1 in 3 Portsmouth children under the age of 18 live with families below the poverty level. Children who experience poverty are twice as likely to drop out of school. The effects of poverty as to their performance in school are that poverty creates barriers to school attendance. Students living in poverty have an increased likelihood of disruptive behavior. They have low academic engagement. They're twice as likely to drop out of school. School dropouts are more likely to be unemployed, if employed, are likely to earn a low wage, are more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system, and are more likely to depend upon public assistance. In short, school dropouts cost the localities money. Without interventions, students who drop out of school are more likely to continue to live in poverty as adults, creating the cycle or circle of poverty. How does communities and schools help address this problem of poverty in Portsmouth? We do so by placing an individual called a site coordinator, and we have engaged in a partnership with Portsmouth Public Schools and with school divisions in the other 6 cities of Hampton Roads for us to work in certain schools within the school divisions. We serve 33 schools across Hampton Roads. 8 of those schools are in Portsmouth. Our site coordinators are assigned 2 responsibilities. Responsibility number 1, build a mentorship relationship with students who are struggling in school. Through that mentorship relationship, the site coordinator determines why they are struggling, and then coordinates resources for that student to overcome the barrier. The other thing that they do is they provide whole school supports. So in certain schools, there are overarching school issues. Maybe it's chronic absenteeism, maybe it's violence, maybe it's bullying. Our site coordinators work hand in hand with the school academic and administrative teams to determine what needs need to be met to address that overarching school issue. When we do that, we monitor their attendance, their behavior, and their course performance, because all 3 of those items are indicators of success in school. We monitor those, and when students receive our services, they improve in those areas. So this goes through our site coordinator jobs. Site coordinators are trained human services professionals who work inside the school buildings. If you walked into a school building, other than maybe a day that they have on a Communities in Schools logoed apparel, you're not going to know that that site coordinator is not a member of the school staff. They're fully integrated into the school community. Site coordinators work with community partners. So if there is a nonprofit or other entity that provides services that one of our students needs, we coordinate to bring those services to the student in the school. Why? It's because if we bring them to the student in the school, the student is going to receive the services. If we send a note home that says, Johnny needs this assistance or extra help, it may not happen. But if we bring that extra help to Johnny in the school, he's going to receive it. What I have just described to you is what we term integrated student supports. Individualized case management, one-on-one solutions to problems to help students succeed. We work in the areas of academic assistance, basic needs, family engagement, basic life skills, mental and physical health, college and career preparation, academic enrichment, anything that's going to help a student be more prepared to achieve in life. We serve 8 schools in Portsmouth. We're in Manor High School and Norcom High School, Craddock and Waters Middle Schools, Craddock Elementary, Douglas Park Elementary, Simonsdale, and Victory Elementaries. We have plans to request funding for expansion from the Hampton Roads Community Foundation to move into the Churchland feeder pattern in the next year. That way, every student who graduates from a Portsmouth public school will have had the opportunity to benefit from the Communities in Schools program. Over the years, you'll see that we have increased our services to the city of Portsmouth. We started, did Dr. Sloan? Oh, there she is. Dr. Sinclair actually has some data for you that, Madam Clerk, could she approach you and bring the data printouts? Or, I'm sorry, to the Sergeant at Arms. We've been serving the city of Portsmouth since 2013. We entered IC Norcom in 2013. Unfortunately, our computer system only takes us for data back to the 2017-2018 school year. I have shared with you all of our data from 2017 to the present. It will show you the success we've had, the number of students we've provided case management services to, the number of students who have excelled or improved in attendance, behavior, course performance, the percentage of students who have graduated, and the percentage of students who have been promoted to the next grade level. But as you can see, the number of students that we've served in Portsmouth has steadily increased because we've been increasing the number of schools we serve. Our number for 24-25 obviously is only through the second academic quarter, so it is possible that we will add case managed students between now and the end of the year, bringing our number above 542 students. This year, or last year, we served 559 students with these individualized, specialized supports, and those 559 students received 4,199 supports. Last year, you can see both from the slides and in your data handout, the success rate we had in maintaining or improving your GPA at the various schools. Our goal is to have at least 75% of students with an attendance, behavior, or academic goal improve. Sometimes the lay of the land or the facts on the ground prohibit us from reaching our 75%. Sometimes student situations are ones where we can't get them over the finish line, but we continue to monitor them next year, and they will improve the next year. Our attendance, we had better appearance in attendance last year. Note that the Craddock Middle is 0%. It is only because there were no students with attendance goals, and that had to do with instructions from the administration. When we go into a school every year, we create a school support plan. The administrators say, we want you to work on X, Y, and Z, or just X, or X and Y, or X, Y, Z, and Q. And last year, the Craddock Middle principal did not wish us to concentrate on attendance. So that's why that number is 0%. Overall, throughout our entire affiliate last year, 83% of our case managed students improved in the metric areas of attendance, behavior, and course performance. 96% of our K through 11 case managed students were promoted to the next grade level, and 97% of our case managed seniors graduated on time. At the end of last year here in Portsmouth, 5,076 students were touched by Communities in Schools through whole school supports. 555 received individualized case management supports. Overall, 71% of those improved their attendance, 56% improved their behavior, 68% improved their course performance, 95% were promoted in K through 11, and 100% of our case managed seniors in Portsmouth graduated on time. Remember that these students are the students who have been identified by administrators as exhibiting behaviors or habits, making them likely to drop out of school. And we had 100% of our case managed seniors graduated on time. what we do isn't free. We have an annual budget. Last year's budget was $2.8 million. We had expansion into additional schools this year in Virginia Beach. So our budget this year is $3.05 million. We spend the greatest majority of our budget on program services. Our program services are our site coordinators. They're our boots on the ground. They're the people in the schools developing relationships with students and connecting those students with the supports that they need. Per school site budget is $78,100 per school. We serve 8 schools in Portsmouth, so communities and schools through various funders makes an investment in Portsmouth of $624,800 annually. Over the years, we've had various funders of our work, many of which have facilitated our expansion into the additional schools. AbbVie Pharmaceutical allowed the expansion into 3 additional schools. The Hampton Roads Community Foundation facilitated our expansion into Manor High School. Truist facilitated our expansion into Victory Elementary School. And the Virginia Department of Education Community Schools Fund allowed our expansion into Craddock Elementary and to Simonsdale Elementary. So there are a lot of external funders who have allowed or facilitated our growth into Portsmouth. Unfortunately, those are generally expansion grants, and those are grants that come to an end. And then we're faced with finding other sources of funding to be able to continue our work in the city of Portsmouth, and frankly, in every other city that we serve. Portsmouth Public Schools since 2022 has generously contributed to our work in this city. Their contribution for this current year, 24-25, is $200,000. Dr. Sinclair and I have met with Mayor Glover, and that's how we ended up here presenting to council, because he is familiar with our organization, as actually I know several of you are as well. And he would like the city, and we would like the city, to consider also providing some funding to communities and schools. And here's the reason why. Communities and schools results in an economic benefit to the entire city. Communities and Schools National Office commissioned a study a number of years ago that determined that for every dollar that is invested in the Communities and Schools program, $11.60 is returned to the community. And that's in the ways that I talked about before. Students who graduate from high school are more likely to pursue post-secondary education of any kind, whether it's going on to get master's or doctoral degrees, or going on to get a certificate from TCC. Those students earn more money. When you earn more money, you pay increased taxes. You're able to afford buying a home or buying a more expensive home. You're less likely to depend upon public assistance, and you're less likely to be involved in the criminal justice system. So when you invest in students who were early on identified as likely continuing in poverty, and you invest in them through the Communities and Schools program, we give you $11.60 return over time in every dollar that you invest in our program. And actually, I didn't make a slide because I hadn't fully read this study yet, but there's a new study from Harvard that we became aware of by our Communities and Schools National Office. And it says that 4 years of exposure to communities and schools generates $1,500 increase in earnings by the age of 30. In low-income students, it reduces non-employment. Each child exposed to 4 years of CIS is expected to pay an additional $9,000 in taxes between the ages of 18 to 65. And the ultimate conclusion of the study is that Communities and Schools is a path for improving economic mobility in low-opportunity neighborhoods. Portsmouth has quite a number of low-opportunity neighborhoods, and we serve students in the schools that serve those low-opportunity neighborhoods. And we would ask that you would consider making that investment in our organization. In the coming year, or in this year and into 25-26, we plan to continue our positive relationship with Portsmouth Public Schools. We plan to improve on our work, reaching our goals of 75% improvement at least in attendance, behavior, and course performance. We plan to have at least 85%, but hoping for that 100% case-managed seniors graduating. Hopefully we can get our K through 11 promotion to 100%. And we will be asking the Hampton Roads Community Foundation to facilitate our expansion into the Churchland feeder pattern by going into Churchland High School and Churchland Middle School. Portsmouth Public Schools is aware of that request. Of course, it's up to the foundation as to whether they're willing to fund it. And I thank you for your time, and Dr. Sinclair and I are open for any questions. I brought her along because she knows a whole lot more about the operational nitty-gritty than I do. I'm just the data girl.
Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Ms. Wilbur and Dr. Sinclair for visiting tonight and discussing the important work that you all are doing for our kids. On slide 12, you shared that you touched 5,076 Portsmouth Public School students through whole school support. What does that mean? What's different about whole school support compared to individual support for the 555 that got individual program?
Sure. So we provide supports on 3 levels. Bring it all the way down to me. We provide supports on 3 tier levels. So tier 1 is our whole school initiative. So that can be something like a back to school program or something of the sort. But we are required to at least do 4 of those, 4 to 6 per year, and touch at least 75% of the total school population. So whether it's a back to school night, whether it's a financial literacy program that touches the entire school, whether we use one of our community partners like Hampton Roads Workforce Council to come in and do something for the students, or TRT, it's not TRT anymore, but the Hampton Roads Transit to get the students passes to use public transportation. So those are our tier 1 supports.
Okay, and then at the bottom of that slide, you mentioned that you graduated 100% of the case-managed seniors. How many case-managed seniors were there?
Do you remember how many, unfortunately?
I don't remember exactly how many seniors there were, but we strive to have, at least 10 case-managed seniors each year. I move them to do that because that helps our numbers. If one of them messes up, you're still at 90%.
Per school.
And that's per school, so that would be at least 20 students, 20 seniors.
And do you have a sense of how many students needed individual case management compared to what you were able to deliver with the funds available?
So we don't have the exact number of how many students needed, but here's what we know. One site coordinator per school is able to case manage at least 63 students. So out of those 63 students, we try to make sure it's even across each of the grade levels. We could easily say 100% of students need us, but that's not always the case, and it just depends on what's going on in the school at that moment.
Were there more students identified to you by the school administration than your capacity to engage?
So I'll say yes, but we turn no one away.
Okay.
So what we might not do is case manage that baby who comes after 63.
Yeah.
But we will provide services to every student who is in the building. So it's no qualification except the fact that you attend this school in order for us to provide a
Okay.
service.
All right, thank you.
And I would add that while all of our numbers reference students, we serve students and their families. So if there is a housing issue, if being homeless is the barrier to the student attending school, then we would connect the family with the housing resources to get the family settled. So while our numbers reflect students, please be aware that we don't just serve the student right there in the school, that those services expand to the families as well.
And one last question. So how dependent are you on federal funding?
Not too dependent
Okay.
at this point, yes.
So we have no direct federal funding at this time. We did receive some federal funding in the 23-24 school year that was special earmark funding by Senators Warner and Kane to allow for increased case management of juniors and seniors. That was a 1 year worth of funding, and we didn't find any grant funders who were willing to continue that funding, and so we had to drop that. But that allowed for an additional case manager one case manager in the city of Portsmouth who case managed additional juniors and seniors in Manor and Norcom, and then also case managed them on the peninsula.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Bryant, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. This is very important work, and it's wonderful to hear because I think a lot of people who either don't have children in schools or don't have children that need these services are aware of how much of an impact these relationships make. Curious a little bit about what kind of staff you hire, what kind of background they have. Are they coming from a teaching background? Are they coming from a social services background? And then what sort of mentorship training they receive before they go in or while they're working in the schools?
Sure. So the majority of our staff have human service backgrounds. I too come from the counseling field as well, so I have a psychology background. With our staff, every summer we provide 3 weeks of rigorous training before school starts, and then they are paired with someone. It could be through our national office, our state office, so they do have peer mentors. But we provide that beginning training to every staff member during the summer and then monthly throughout as well.
I just want to add to that. I'm certain that the people who fill these types of roles and work with students in this way must continue their relationships in some form after students graduate. Those connections are really powerful and long-lasting. Do you see, maybe formally or informally, are mentors allowed to maintain some form of relationship with students after graduation? Because that can be also a very life-changing experience for a lot of people.
Yes, we do not have formal tracking. It's an awful word, but formal tracking of our students once they have graduated, although we have been working over several years to develop such a program and implement it. But we do a recent story from one site coordinator at Bayside High School in Virginia Beach. He had a young woman that he worked with last year who was having, because of family problems, trouble with attendance. He called her every morning to get her up and to encourage her to come to school. She graduated with some help on making up work and things of that nature. She intended to join the military. She relocated to Atlanta to get herself together, and she recently returned to visit him because she was reporting here for boot camp. So she was successful, and she made sure she came back to Bayside High School to thank Mr. Clanton for all he did for her. And Mr. Clanton had a second student return recently, but I don't remember that story.
And so one thing too is I actually started out as a site coordinator. So a lot of the students way back in the day, 2013 to 2015, I still do communicate with my students. This year we were able to hire our first alum. She graduated from Booker T. Washington, and she's actually going to be a site coordinator in Craddock Elementary this year. So we are excited about her, and she's doing a phenomenal job as well. While she graduated from Booker T, I think it was 2020, she also got her 4-year degree from ODU, and she's back in the area to be our site coordinator. So we're excited about her.
That's wonderful to hear. That really speaks to the power of the program. Thank you for sharing that.
Councilman Dodson, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So I see you're presenting all your success, some numbers here. A couple questions. You said 11.62% of Portsmouth families live below the poverty level. You have any comparison to the national average that you're looking at? Is Portsmouth
Portsmouth is
needy?
Above the national average.
Which is what?
9% is sticking in my head, but don't
That's
hold
okay.
me to that. I should know that as many times as I write that in a grant application.
So we're saying we're a
but-
needy city.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Portsmouth has high rate of the overall poverty rate in the city of Portsmouth is 18%, but families with with children is 11.62. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, I encourage you to check out GHR Connects. I think it's .org, but that's the United Way statistical arm, and it will give you every stat you would ever wish to know about your city, your zip code, et cetera. And that's where that stat came from.
But I'm guessing the point of the presentation tonight is not just to shine your light, but to ask for money. I don't see the ask in your presentation.
Well, so I've verbally asked, I believe, that the Portsmouth Public Schools contributes $200,000, and we would ask the city to consider matching that amount, but would not shy away from any amount.
Thanks.
Especially a higher one. Just saying.
Yeah, always ask.
It costs $624,000 and change to provide our services to the 8 schools that we serve in the city. And the Portsmouth Public Schools very generously contributes $200,000 of that. Last year, we closed our gap because we asked the United Way for money, and other funders, Port of Virginia, the Portsmouth Service League. I mean, I listed the Portsmouth funders, the people who support us. But yes, we would like the city to make the investment because the citizens and the overall city of Portsmouth are the ones that benefit from the return.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Thomas, did you want the floor, ma'am?
No, I just wanted to say, I come from the school board, very familiar with the work. My only question was, and I think you kind of answered it, with Portsmouth Public Schools continuing to make that investment, is that something they're continuing to do in order to promote, I think you said, entryway into the Churchland area schools? Is that something that Portsmouth Public Schools has expressed interest in moving forward with?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I knocked on wood.
Okay,
Their funding goes to
The current
to cover
schools.
current, but we were seeking an investment from the Hampton Roads Community Foundation, and it would be a 3-year expansion grant that would cover entry into those 2 schools for 3 years, and then at the end of those 3 years, those funds dry up, and so we have to go.
so the schools have to commit, each school district, Virginia Beach, Hampton, Portsmouth, they have to continuously commit funding dollars every 3-year cycle, I guess, in order to continue the programming in their schools. Is that correct?
It's actually annually.
Annually, okay,
Yes.
sorry, okay. All right, annually,
So
thank you.
every school division that we serve, we receive some level of support from the city and or the school division.
Yes.
It is it goes from little to a lot, but every school division has an investment. And we require to expand into additional schools without an expansion grant, an investment from the school division or the city, because it's very difficult to raise private dollars if you don't have buy-in from the school division or the city.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you both. And if we could request, if you could provide some data, comparison data of the other localities in which support communities and schools, I think that would provide a visual to show the commitment of other localities. We certainly would appreciate that. And also, I want to recognize, of course, Dr. Hope Sinclair. She is very modest and doesn't like to use her title, but she has absolutely earned that title. And certainly Ann Wilbur, it's a pleasure to see both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We very much appreciate your time. Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Mr. Carter, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes the presentations for this evening. However, I'd like to go through a brief review of the city manager reports for this evening's meeting. Currently have 8 on the docket. 7 are ordinances, 1 is a resolution. All the ordinances are looking to get approval to adjust the FY25 budget in one way or another. First of all, the city is seeking to accept $1,290 from the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles for a dog and cat sterilization program. The Department of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services is set to receive $30,000 from the Virginia Department of Emergency Management to support the Southside Regional Hazardous Material Response Team. And just as a side note, Portsmouth is the lead city for this regional team. The Community Development and Housing is seeking to allocate $89,840 into the CDBG program income and $24,844 into the home investment income. Those are both funds that has been provided by either the sale of land or the repayment of loans from those programs. So again, that program is actually moving in the direction that it was built to do. I have two grants that we're seeking for our lead service line replacement program. The first one is $150,000 for the service line replacement gap analysis and action plan. The second one is $103,401 for a inventory and sampling plan. The thing about both of those grants are we had initially applied for loans on those amounts. Subsequently, those loans have been turned into a grant, and we're seeking your approval to accept, to convert those loans into grants. And there will be no repayment from the city as a result of that. The Family Preservation and Support Program from the Department of Social Services is being awarded $599 to support at-risk families by providing counseling, protective services, and residential assistance and transportation. There is a 15.5% local match in this, but it's already included in the budget for this year. The Department of Social Services is also set to receive $50,000 in additional IVE foster care funding from the Department of Social Services, the Virginia Department of Social Services, to cover costs of food, clothing, shelter, and school supplies or other personal items for children in foster care. And finally, the city is applying to become a member through the Portsmouth Partnership, a member of the Mobilizing Main Street Community under the Virginia Main Street Program. This is simply a resolution at this point showing our support that we're going to provide for that program and for that process. More on that will happen and come to us in the future, but right now the only requirement is a resolution showing our support. These proposed actions reflect Portsmouth's commitment to public safety, environmental sustainability, social welfare, and our economic growth. So I ask you if you would humbly accept these items and support them as we move into the next meeting. That's all I have for the day, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Are there any liaison reports for this evening? Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. A couple of liaison reports. First is regarding Portsmouth Parking Authority. That group met a week ago, and they had a long list of old business to cover. Before they started into their old business, they were visited by a business owner from the 600 block of High Street, so the western end of downtown High Street, who shared a long list of parking concerns on that end of High Street, which, as everybody knows, is kind of the opposite end of downtown from where our parking garages are located. So that business owner added some new business items to the Portsmouth Parking Authority list of things to do. There was a lengthy discussion about the design for the County Street garage that's intended to be built on the location of the old garage that was torn down this past year, and I shared some of that feedback with the city manager subsequent to the meeting. I think for the benefit of my colleagues, the Portsmouth Parking Authority recognizes that all of the downtown development that we have in our gun sites right now is going to involve the Portsmouth Parking Authority to find temporary parking solutions because of the impact to the parking garages that are going to get caught up in the demo and then eventually the rebuild of things downtown. So it'll be important to make sure that the Parking Authority has a voice at the table to help us navigate through those parking challenges. The other update I'll share, the Portsmouth Port and Industrial Commission met this morning I was able to share with them what I'm about to share with you. I've had a chance to talk with the leadership at Norfolk Naval Shipyard regarding some of the stuff that's been coming out of Washington and potential impacts on our largest industry in Portsmouth. As you all know, government employees, civil servants were offered the opportunity to leave civil service, take their pay with them to the end of this fiscal year. When people think about government workers, they tend to think about people in white shirts and ties, pushing pencils and tapping on computers, but our welders, our ship fitters, our pipe fitters, all the folks that work on the waterfront on our ships are also government employees. They all got the opportunity to depart the pattern and keep their pay to the end of the fiscal year. Fortunately for them and for us, only about 240 of the 10,000 or so employees at Norfolk Naval Shipyard took that opportunity to leave. So the impact it's still an impact, but not what it potentially could have been to the shipyard's ability to get work done, and also the impact to the city. We'll stay tuned to see what else comes out of Washington and how that may impact them and ultimately impact the rest of us. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we do have a need to go into a closed session. So I would now ask if Vice Mayor Moody please read the closed session motion.
I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel employed by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, specifically regarding 1, the Port of Virginia, 2, recent shootings in the city.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 6-0.
We are in closed session. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a need to come out of closed session. So at this time, Vice Mayor Moody, if you would read the certification to come out of closed.
I hereby move that each council member certify that, to the best of his or her knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and 2, only such public business matters that were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 5-0.
Thank you, ma'am. And ladies and gentlemen, I will apologize for the lengthy closed session. We had a very important topic to discuss. However, we are going to take 10 minutes, and we will reconvene on our regularly scheduled council meeting at 7:52.